People don't like to admit it, but here's a truth most learn the hard way. The man who cares less often leaves the deepest mark. It sounds twisted, it sounds wrong, but watch enough relationships unfold and you'll see it play out like clockwork. You'd think being loved fully openly, consistently would make someone feel the safest, the most desired, and for some it does. But for many women, the opposite hits harder. The men who love softly, fully, steadily, they're often overlooked. The ones who remain just slightly emotionally unavailable, the ones who don't pour it all out, they're the ones that get remembered. Not because they're better, because they're harder to read. And that emotional friction, that tension of not quite knowing, that creates a gravitational pull. Not the kind of love that feels warm and safe, the kind that feels addictive. She starts combing for clues, reading into words that weren't meant to mean much, watching for patterns in how long it takes him to respond. Suddenly every silence has weight, every gesture carries inflated meaning. Why? Because he's not giving her what she craves, outright certainty. And in the absence of certainty, the mind fills in the blanks, the heart leans in to solve the mystery. And now she's invested not just in him, but in decoding the ambiguity he leaves behind. Here's the harsh truth. When someone keeps you guessing, your mind stays active. That activation, it gets confused for love, but it's not love. It's anxiety wearing passion's clothes. And the brain, funny enough, bonds tighter to things it has to work for. It trusts what it labors over. It assigns value to effort, not outcomes. So when the emotional connection isn't handed over freely, something deep inside starts believing it's more worth having. There's no villain here, no manipulation, just the brutal reality of how attraction often gets tangled up with uncertainty. The man who's steady, emotionally available, and communicative creates calm. But calm doesn't spike the nervous system. Calm doesn't create highs and lows. Calm doesn't occupy your thoughts all day. Chaos does. And for people wired on chemistry and emotional highs, calm doesn't register as romantic. It registers as flat. That's the problem. It feels wrong to crave the person who loves less, but it happens. It happens because desire isn't logical. It's wired for movement, tension, unpredictability. So, when he doesn't over-explain, doesn't flood her with texts, doesn't rush to solidify labels, it creates space. And that space becomes intrigue. That intrigue turns into obsession. And suddenly, she's telling herself a story. One she doesn't even realize she's writing, page after page, all authored by lack. He becomes unforgettable, not because he gave so much, but because he didn't. And her mind makes up the difference. She tells herself it's love. That gnawing feeling in her chest, that constant wondering, that inability to focus on anything else. It feels like love. It has all the intensity, all the weight, all the symptoms, but it's not love, it's activation. Her nervous system is on high alert, scanning, searching, waiting for signals that never fully arrive. And that heightened state creates a rush, a chemical cocktail that feels intoxicating. She mistakes the adrenaline for affection, the anxiety for connection, the obsession for depth. Nobody taught her the difference. Nobody sat her down and explained that love isn't supposed to feel like drowning. That real connection doesn't keep you up at night questioning everything. That healthy attachment doesn't require constant mental gymnastics to decode. Instead, she learned love from movies, from songs, from stories that glorify the chase. Every romantic comedy ends with someone running through an airport. Every love song is about wanting someone you can't have. Every novel builds tension through separation, miscommunication, almost moments that never quite land. So when a man shows up and loves her clearly, directly, without games, it doesn't match the template. It doesn't feel like the story she internalized. Where's the drama? Where's the tension? Where's the moment where everything almost falls apart before coming together? His consistency feels foreign. His openness feels suspicious. His availability feels too easy. And easy doesn't register as valuable to a heart trained on scarcity. Meanwhile, the man who keeps her guessing fits the script perfectly. He's mysterious, unpredictable, hard to pin down, and her imagination runs wild, filling in the gaps he leaves behind. She projects meaning onto his silence, assumes depth behind his distance, assigns significance to every crumb he offers. The less he gives, the more she creates. She becomes the author of a love story he never agreed to write. This is the trap of cultural conditioning. We romanticize longing more than fulfillment. We celebrate pursuit more than partnership. We make movies about the chase and roll credits before the boring part, the actual relationship. So she keeps chasing feelings that burn bright and fade fast, keeps mistaking intensity for intimacy, keeps overlooking men who could actually love her well because they don't trigger that familiar rush of uncertainty. The relationship that could nurture her feels flat, the one that could destroy her feels electric, and she keeps choosing electricity because nobody told her peace was an option. Her nervous system doesn't know the difference between excitement and danger. Both create the same physical response, both make the heart race, both demand attention. So she follows the sensation, trusting it to lead somewhere meaningful. But it leads nowhere. Just circles, just patterns repeating, just the same story with different faces. She says she wants stability, she means it, but her body craves chaos. And until she learns to override that craving, until she reprograms what love is supposed to feel like, she'll keep running toward men who leave her empty. Every single time. The moment she starts leaning forward and he stays standing still, the entire dynamic shifts. Not intentional, not planned, just inevitable. She's texting first more often, initiating plans, checking in, making sure everything's okay between them. He's responding when convenient, showing up when it suits him, not pulling away completely, just not matching her effort. And that imbalance, it doesn't push her away, it pulls her in deeper. Because now she's invested. Not just emotionally, mentally, physically, every part of her is engaged in closing that gap. She's strategizing, analyzing, trying to figure out what she needs to do differently to get him to meet her halfway. The man who isn't chasing becomes a center of gravity. Everything tilts toward him. Her thoughts, her energy, her entire emotional landscape reorganizes itself around someone who isn't even trying that hard. This isn't about women being weak or broken. This is basic human psychology. We value what we have to work for. We obsess over what we can't easily have. We chase what moves away from us. She doesn't enjoy feeling this way. She hates it actually, hates lying awake wondering why he went quiet, hates refreshing her phone hoping for a message, hates how small she feels waiting for scraps of attention from someone who used to be more present. But she can't stop, because stopping would mean admitting she wasted her time, wasted her feelings, invested in someone who wasn't worth it. So it reframes, it justifies, it tells her he's just guarded, just busy, just needs time to open up. That if she's patient enough, consistent enough, understanding enough, he'll eventually see her value and step up. Meanwhile, he's not thinking about any of this. He's living his life, doing his thing. Maybe he likes her, maybe he doesn't. Either way, his world doesn't revolve around her response. And that indifference, that's what makes him magnetic. She tells herself she wants a man who's obsessed with her, who prioritizes her, who makes her feel chosen every single day. But when that man shows up, something in her goes cold. There's no mystery, no challenge, no hunt. He's too available, too eager, too easy to predict, and predictability, to a nervous system trained on chaos, feels like death. So she stays stuck on the man who doesn't give enough, convincing herself it's love when it's really just unfinished business, just her ego refusing to accept that someone could remain unmoved by her presence. Peace feels wrong to her, calm feels suspicious, safety feels boring. And the man who actually loves her gets labeled nice and friend-zoned, while she loses sleep over someone who barely texts back. That's the cruel irony. The more he pulls back, the harder she chases. The less he offers, the more she convinces herself he's worth it. Emotional gravity always pulls toward the person who isn't leaning, always. He thinks honesty will win her over. Thinks if he just shows her exactly how he feels, she'll finally relax into the relationship, finally trust him, finally stop questioning everything. So he tells her, opens up completely, puts every card on the table. No games, no ambiguity, no wondering where he stands because he makes it crystal clear. And something strange happens. Instead of drawing her closer, it pushes her away. Not immediately, not obviously, but slowly something shifts. The spark dims, the tension dissolves. The electricity that used to crackle between them goes flat. She can't explain it, doesn't even understand it herself. But suddenly he feels different, less exciting, less intriguing, less like someone she needs to figure out and more like someone she already has. This is the brutal paradox good men face. Clarity kills curiosity, certainty extinguishes chase. When there's nothing left to wonder about, the mind stops engaging. He removed every question mark, answered every doubt before she could ask, made himself completely knowable. And in doing so, he accidentally made himself completely predictable. Predictable feels safe, but safe doesn't create desire. Safe doesn't occupy her thoughts at 2 in the morning. Safe doesn't make her heart race when his name appears on her phone. She needed tension to stay emotionally invested, needed some uncertainty to keep the mystery alive, needed a reason to keep leaning forward, and he eliminated all of it by being too available, too transparent, too eager to prove his love. Meanwhile, the man who doesn't over-explain keeps her guessing. He shares pieces of himself slowly, reveals depths gradually, leaves room for discovery even after months together. His silence isn't punishment. It's simply absence of noise. He doesn't feel compelled to narrate his feelings constantly. Doesn't rush to reassure her every time tension arises. Trusts that actions speak louder than declarations, and that restraint creates space. Space for her imagination, space for her curiosity, space for her to wonder what he's thinking instead of already knowing. She fills that space with projections, which actions assumes depth exists in the places he doesn't reveal, and suddenly he becomes endlessly fascinating while the open book gathers dust on her shelf. Men watch this happen and learn the wrong lesson. They think they need to become cold, distant, emotionally unavailable. They think withholding affection is the secret to being desired. But that's not what creates attraction. That creates damage. The difference isn't about loving less. It's about not needing her validation to feel complete. Not rearranging his entire existence around her reactions, not treating every emotional fluctuation like an emergency requiring immediate response. She doesn't want less love. She wants love that doesn't suffocate, love that leaves room to breathe, love that invites her in without demanding she stay. Clarity without neediness attracts. Clarity wrapped in desperation repels. Most men never learn the difference until it's already too late. Here's where most men get it completely backwards. They see the pattern and draw the wrong conclusion. They think the answer is becoming colder, more distant, more emotionally unavailable. So they start playing games, waiting hours to respond, acting indifferent when they actually care, pretending not to notice her when she walks into the room, and it backfires spectacularly. Because withholding affection without genuine inner strength isn't attractive. It's just manipulation wearing a mask. And she feels it. Maybe not immediately, but eventually the performance cracks, the insecurity leaks through, he's pulling away, but still watching her reaction, going silent, but still desperate for her attention, acting unbothered, but dying inside for validation. That contradiction creates confusion, not attraction, not desire, just mess. The man who naturally creates this response isn't calculating anything. He isn't timing his texts or strategizing his emotional distance. He simply doesn't build his identity around romantic outcomes. His purpose existed before she entered his life. His confidence wasn't waiting for her approval to materialize. His sense of direction didn't require her presence to stay on course. So when he loves, it comes from overflow, not from emptiness seeking to be filled, not from loneliness hoping to be cured, from genuine choice, not desperate need. That's the difference she feels, not how much love he offers, but where that love originates. Love born from neediness feels heavy, clingy, suffocating. It carries invisible strings, unspoken expectations, silent demands for reciprocity. Love born from wholeness feels light, free, easy to receive. There's no pressure attached, no guilt for not matching his intensity, no obligation to manage his emotional state. She can breathe around him, relax, be herself without worrying that her mood will send him spiraling. That freedom feels like love, that spaciousness feels like safety, that independence feels like strength. Men who try faking this always fail. They can mimic the behaviors temporarily, stay busy, act focused, pretend they don't care. But the foundation is hollow, and hollow foundations eventually collapse. Real grounding can be performed. It has to be built, brick by brick, through purpose, through discipline, through becoming someone whose happiness doesn't depend on whether she texts back. When a man reaches that place authentically, everything changes. Not just his relationships, his entire presence shifts. He walks differently, speaks differently, responds differently to rejection and acceptance alike. She senses that solidity, that unshakable center that doesn't move based on her moods, and something inside her relaxes. Finally, someone who doesn't need fixing, someone who isn't asking her to complete him. Optional love feels valuable. Required love feels burdensome. He's there because he wants to be, not because he'd fall apart otherwise. And that distinction changes everything about how his love lands. She doesn't want a man who loves her less. She wants a man whose love doesn't cost him his identity, whose affection doesn't come wrapped in desperation, whose presence doesn't demand constant emotional maintenance. That's the real difference. Everything else is just noise. What she's actually responding to isn't reduced affection. It's the absence of emotional burden, the relief of not carrying someone else's feelings on her shoulders. When a man depends on her reactions to feel okay about himself, she senses it immediately. Every conversation becomes a test. Every silence becomes loaded. Every mood shift on her end creates ripples in his stability. That pressure exhausts her, even when she loves him. Even when she wants things to work. Because now she's responsible for two emotional states, hers and his. She can't have a bad day without him wondering what he did wrong. Can't need space without him interpreting it as rejection. Can't be human without managing his response to her humanity. The man who doesn't need her to regulate his emotions removes that weight entirely. He is steady regardless of what she brings to the table. Her bad mood doesn't destabilize him. Her need for distance doesn't threaten him. Her fluctuations don't send him into analysis mode. And that steadiness? That's what feels like love to a woman who's spent years being someone else's emotional anchor. She can finally just exist, without performing happiness to keep him calm, without censoring her feelings to protect his ego, without walking on eggshells around someone who claims to love her. This is why emotionally self-sufficient men get labeled as distant when they're actually just stable. They don't flood her with reassurance because they don't need it themselves. They don't chase her emotions because their well-being doesn't depend on catching them. That independence reads as confidence. That containment reads as strength. That self-regulation reads as maturity. Meanwhile, the man who pours everything into the relationship creates an invisible debt. Every grand gesture comes with unspoken expectations. Every declaration of love carries subtle pressure to match his intensity. She feels the weight of that debt accumulating, the obligation to appreciate enough, to reciprocate enough, to prove she's worthy of his investment. Love stops feeling like a gift, starts feeling like a loan with interest. She pulls back, not because she doesn't care, but because the emotional math doesn't add up. She's withdrawing from a dynamic that takes more than it gives. When his happiness depends entirely on her, she becomes his emotional hostage, responsible for something she never agreed to carry. Trapped by guilt every time she can't meet his needs. The man who sources his happiness internally doesn't create hostages, he creates partners, equals, two people choosing each other freely without desperation clouding the connection. His love doesn't come with strings because he didn't attach any. His affection doesn't come with expectations because he isn't keeping score. His presence doesn't come with pressure because he's complete without her response. She feels the completeness, and instead of feeling unneeded, she feels free. Free to love him without obligation. Free to stay without guilt, free to be imperfect without losing him. That freedom is rare, and rare feels precious, even when it's quieter than what she's known before. When a man finally reaches this place of genuine wholeness, his love takes on a completely different texture. It lands differently, feels different in her body, creates something she can't quite name but recognizes instantly. There's weight to his words without heaviness, depth to his presence without drowning, intention behind his actions without agenda attached. She doesn't have to decode him, doesn't have to wonder if his kindness comes with hidden invoices, doesn't have to brace herself for the eventual reveal of what he really wants in return. His love just sits there, solid, undemanding, available without being intrusive, and something in her exhales, finally. A man who means what he says without needing her to validate the meaning. This is what mature love actually looks like. Not fireworks, not constant intensity, not emotional roller coasters dressed up as passion. Just presence, just reliability. Just someone who shows up the same way whether she's at her best or her worst. But here's the problem. This kind of love doesn't register immediately to someone still addicted to chaos. It doesn't spike her nervous system, doesn't flood her brain with dopamine, doesn't create that familiar rush she's learned to associate with romance. So she might miss it at first, overlook it, dismiss it as lacking chemistry. Chemistry itself is misleading. It measures activation, not compatibility. It tells you how reactive your emotions are, not how sustainable the connection will be. The man who creates uncertainty generates more chemistry, more highs, more crashes, more of that addictive cycle that feels like love but leaves her depleted. The man who creates safety generates less chemistry initially, but what he builds lasts, what he offers sustains, what he provides actually nourishes instead of just stimulating. She might not recognize this immediately. It might take years of chasing intensity before she understands what she actually needs versus what she habitually craves. Timing becomes everything. The same woman who rejects a grounded man at 23 might desperately seek him at 35, not because he changed, because she finally grew into someone capable of receiving what he offers. Her nervous system recalibrated through enough painful lessons. Her definition of love matured through enough empty connections. What once felt boring finally feels like home. Men need to hear this without becoming resentful. Being overlooked early doesn't mean being deficient. It means being incompatible with someone's current emotional programming. That programming isn't permanent, but waiting around hoping she'll evolve isn't the answer either. The grounded man keeps building himself regardless, keeps loving from wholeness regardless, keeps offering something real regardless of whether she's ready to receive it. Eventually, the right woman recognizes it, feels the relief of his steadiness, understands the value of his consistency, chooses him not because he triggered her wounds, but because he offered something entirely different, something that doesn't burn hot and fast, then disappear, something that stays, something real, something lasting. Understanding this pattern shouldn't turn you bitter, shouldn't make you cynical about women, or love, or relationships in general. It should simply open your eyes to dynamics most people never consciously recognize. She's not your enemy for responding to uncertainty. She's human, wired by evolution and conditioned by culture to interpret certain signals in certain ways. Understanding that removes the frustration, but understanding also demands responsibility. Knowing how attraction works means choosing how you show up, not manipulating, not performing, just becoming genuinely grounded instead of faking detachment. The men who internalize this wrongly become cold, calculated, strategic about every interaction. They weaponize distance and wonder why their relationships feel hollow. That's not the lesson here. Withholding love doesn't make you high value. Loving from wholeness does. There's a massive difference most never grasp. When you build a life that fulfills you independently, relationships become additions rather than foundations. She enters something already complete rather than being asked to complete something broken. That shift changes everything. Your energy changes, your expectations change, your tolerance for dysfunction changes. You stop chasing women who can't meet you where you stand. Alignment becomes the filter. Alignment, not attraction alone, not chemistry alone, not how badly she makes you want her, but whether she's capable of receiving what you actually offer. Some women aren't ready. Maybe they'll never be. That's not your problem to solve. Your problem is becoming the man whose love doesn't require reciprocation to remain intact. When you reach that place, rejection loses its devastation. It becomes information, redirection, clarity about where your energy doesn't belong. You stop performing confidence, start embodying it. Stop strategizing attraction, start allowing it. Stop chasing validation, start attracting alignment. Women who belong in your life will feel the difference immediately. They won't experience your love as pressure, won't feel obligated to manage your emotions, won't carry the weight of your happiness on their shoulders. They'll experience freedom, space, the rare gift of being loved without conditions attached, and that gift keeps them choosing you. Not from fear of loss, from genuine desire to stay. This is where love finally becomes simple. Never easy, but simple, clear, uncomplicated by neediness or games or endless emotional negotiations. Two whole people choosing each other repeatedly, not because they'd collapse apart, because together feels better than alone. That's the destination worth reaching, the love worth building toward. The relationship that doesn't require constant maintenance, because the foundation isn't cracked. She doesn't need a man who loves her less. She needs a man who loves without losing himself. And you don't need someone who keeps you guessing. You need someone capable of meeting your grounded love with her own. Everything else is just preparation for that moment. If this hit different, if something here finally clicked, subscribe now. More content coming that goes even deeper. This is just the beginning of understanding what most never will.